Yeah. So Romy has had pandas for 10 years, so since she was 8, and I've had pandas for pandas for 6 years, also since I was 8. So yeah. So would you like to start with the symptoms and treatments? Some of them.
Okay, so mine, when I was 8 years old, I changed overnight. That's obviously what a lot of people in the pandas community say. And I developed very severe Tourette OCD, and I couldn't really dress myself. I couldn't really sleep in a room of my own because my separation anxiety. I couldn't walk up the stairs in my home or use the toilet in my home, and it was debilitating. And I also had like a sudden sort of personality change with oppositional defiance, and I wasn't like sweet anymore like I used to be. And then I also had very severe rage attacks where I would lash out at my parents and stuff. And also at the time I had like sensory processing issues, and in my teenage years I just had very severe motor and vocal tics. And then in my like recent flare at the age of 17, I suddenly changed again and lost my coordination, had dilated pupils. I had a thing where I struggled to sleep, and then when I would sleep for 3 hours at a time, and then my thoughts were arguing my sleep. Again, OCD stuff, lots of constant intrusive thoughts, depressive symptoms, and lots of different things came up then. But yes, like, would you say like you've had similar sort of experiences?
Yeah, like I also changed suddenly overnight. Like, and suddenly you would be thinking it's getting better, and then you'll be worse off than you were before. So yeah. I used to react to antibiotics at first when I was diagnosed just with pandas. But then this year, when after being actually quite well for a while, when I was getting worse again, we tried 6 different antibiotics and none of them worked. So I just wasn't responding anymore. So then after trying different meds and stuff, we had to, tried steroids, and unfortunately steroids was the only medicine at that time then that I was responding to. So then I was on steroids for over 6 months, and then 4 months ago I was able to start IVIG, and thanks to IVIG, which I've seen a lot of improvement in, I've been able to get off steroids, and now it's been, I think, over 2 weeks or 3 weeks now that I'm off steroids. My symptoms are like, there was a huge decline in like handwriting and math skills. Like, just if I was writing stuff, the words wouldn't really make sense anymore. Yeah, and the sentences. And this year I started having hallucinations, which also shows that symptoms can change over time. But after a while, it stopped again.
Yeah. You have fluconazole.
Oh, I had wait, that triggered it, right?
No.
Oh, no.
That took it away.
Oh, I've had fluconazole, and that stopped my hallucinations. I have still a lot of anger, rage that I can get, and like irritability, and then extreme OCD and anxiety, and like mood swings, and like a big sleeping issue. So like for quite a while I only can go to sleep if I have antihistamines and melatonin, high dosages. And yeah, because before I would either struggle to fall asleep, and then I would wake up in the middle of the night, like at 2 or 3, and not be able to go back to bed. Like, just couldn't. I have a lot of pain and like aches constantly, like no matter how much I stretch and stuff like that, it just doesn't really help that much. I have a lot of separation anxiety, and sensory sensitivity, like with smell and sound sometimes if it's loud. And like you also have, I can get quite diluted pupils. Yeah.
Yeah, the handwriting thing I've had as well. You remind me of that. My handwriting is not very good. But yes, that definitely deteriorated as well. I would say the treatments that have helped me, I responded to penicillin, thankfully. That, I would say, decreased the OCD by about 80%, and also got rid of the sleep issues, got rid of loss of coordination, and the dilated pupils and stuff. I also found that eliminating food sensitivities really helped. So I eliminated dairy, and there was dramatic decrease in my tics and Tourette OCD. I was able to go off antipsychotic medication, which I was on from eliminating dairy. And then I also eliminate food dyes because they would trigger very severe rage attacks. And then I also find I take sertraline for the OCD as well. That does take the edge off the OCD and depressive symptoms. And also I use like turmeric, which is like a natural anti-inflammatory, that helps as well.
I used to also try turmeric, but now when I was in a really bad flare, it didn't really help anymore. But sertraline also helps me a lot. And also, like you said, well, we found out after a lot of testing that I have a lot of food intolerances actually. So like dairy, wheat, just a lot of things. So, and I think it definitely also helps if you have a special diet kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah. Like I also don't eat gluten. I didn't see such a dramatic change from that, but I don't eat that because it's anti-inflammatory, and I also don't eat sugar because that makes me really hyper. So I had to cut that out as well. So there's quite a bit of dietary sensitivities, definitely.
Yeah.
But yes, were you misdiagnosed with anything before being diagnosed with PANDAS?
Yeah, for 2 years I was just diagnosed with OCD, but CBT didn't help. And then my mum was like, after like me being ill, like and stuff, and doctors not being able to help, she did a lot of like research online and stuff, and then somehow she came across PANDAS, and she just like in stories that she was reading, she just could like it sounded like somebody was talking about me and stuff. Then she was pretty sure that I have this condition, so we flew actually to America to get diagnosed, and I with Dr. Latimer, and yeah, then I got diagnosed with PANDAS for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's incredible that you went to America, but it's very sad that people have to do that to get the diagnosis because it's so misunderstood here. But yes, I'm not formally diagnosed yet with PANDAS, but from the sudden developing the symptoms that, change in each flare and the responding to antibiotics, we know that I have PANDAS. My mum has known that I have PANDAS for quite a long time, but we went to the doctors when I was younger and weren't really taken seriously. So the diagnoses I do have are Tourette syndrome, OCD, and autism. But, a lot of the symptoms don't fit into those. I think from the symptom list, PANDAS symptom list, I think the only symptoms I haven't really had are psychosis and food restrictions, thankfully. But, they don't all fit into the diagnoses I'm given, so that's how we know. But yeah, I think because a lot of doctors don't really understand it, a lot of people are misdiagnosed, and I think there are only a few like private doctors who can diagnose people, but if people don't know about PANDAS in the first place or can't get to them, then it can be really difficult for people.
Yeah, because I don't know where I would be today if my mum didn't hear about this, and which is unfortunate. That happens to a lot of children, and they get the wrong treatments and stuff like that. And there, like you said, there are only a few like doctors in the UK that treat it, but I just think more doctors and like need to kind of update their, not system, but you know what they learn, and they need to be educated about it. And yeah, because because I know how bad I can be off, and I've been off, even though I was diagnosed with PANDAS, and I was getting help. But so I just don't know what people that haven't been diagnosed don't know what's wrong with them, how they cope and stuff. And so
Yeah, and people getting the wrong treatments as well. Like CBT didn't really work for me either, so I think that is a big issue. People feeling helpless because the therapy isn't working, medication doesn't always work for everyone. So people can feel very helpless, and I feel that it's tragic because even if people do respond to medications, they only target certain symptoms, and people can still be dealing with, other things like regression, handwriting deterioration, brain fog, lots of different things. Like there are things that the medication doesn't target. So it's important to actually find out what it is so that the root can be addressed, the underlying infection eliminated, and inflammation reduced, because that's the most important thing to treat it correctly.
Yeah, and also I think a lot of people sometimes know that things like that pandas just gets triggered by strep, but actually there is research, but there's not lots. But from some of the research that has been done, they have found out that it can also be caused by other infections, or like environmental triggers and stuff. So although first when I got ill, it was triggered by strep, but now we know it's triggered by strep and other infections. So even if a doctor might do a strep test and it might be negative, doesn't mean that you don't have PANS or PANDAS, because it could be caused by other things. Yeah. And then due to like misdiagnosis and stuff, we talked about before, that a lot of parents then get blamed, and
the parent blaming is a huge issue. I feel like some people are told, it's behavioural, you need to discipline them more. That's definitely, my parents were told that quite a lot. So it is sad that, people are told, first of all, parents are made to feel guilty, and people are disciplined for something that's completely out of their control. And unfortunately, I feel like that does happen quite a bit, and that does need to change.
Because the parents are already struggling with their child that's ill, which is already hard enough, but then also them by other people not helping them and just telling them that it's basically their fault or something like that is just I don't really know if my mum had to deal with a lot of parent blaming.
Not many. We did have one doctor down the line, that a psychiatrist, who tried to actually say, well, he doesn't believe pandas could have anything to do with hallucinations, and he was speaking to Angelina, but he could never speak to Angelina alone. So that was indicating maybe I was influencing anything that she was saying, something that she was saying. What I did have to deal with a lot, and I think all parents experience that, is family, friends, saying, oh, she's just misbehaving, or it's about you, you're not being hard enough on her, or all kinds of things. I think there are a lot of accusations that parents get, and it's not necessary. you know, if you don't have anything nice to say, then just don't say it, I would suggest to some people.
Yeah. And like, I think the problem also with that is if the parents then, even though they're doing the right thing, let themselves get influenced by those people, they could actually, and then maybe be harder on ourselves or on us, or punish us more, then that's just going to make it even worse. Like, because you have to understand our condition, and if you don't even know that we have that condition, you might not be that understanding, and you might treat me different to how maybe somebody that's not ill would be treated, because
Yeah, I definitely think that happens sometimes. People might be told that the rage attacks or oppositional defiance is behavioural, but it's actually the result of an inflamed brain. But, you know, for one, the parents are already, as you said, struggling so much. I feel like that would just cause them to feel so guilty when they're already struggling to cope. And then as well as that, it could influence how the person with PANDAS pants is treated potentially. If the parents obviously are trying to help, they don't know any better. But, you know, sometimes if someone's in a rage attack and you try to reason with us or discipline us, unfortunately, it can kind of add fuel to the fire. Because we can't reason when we're in a rage attack. So, and they come on involuntarily, so it's not something we can really control.
Yeah, and like, we're just also, especially in a rage attack, we can't process anything. So like saying stuff like that, saying things, and just in general things that happen, we then just can't process it. Even though we hear it, we are not able to think about anything. We're not able to think straight. Like, it's like in, what was it, flight or fright? No, flight or fright. Kind of like, and stuff like that. It's kind of like us when we're in a flare, because like, even though we know nothing bad's gonna really happen, just like our whole body's just going, because our brain is on fire and inflamed, we're just going crazy. So yeah, especially I struggle daily with my symptoms, but especially when I'm like in a really bad flare or onset, or what do you call it? Yeah, onset or something, and I have my anger, my rages and stuff and everything. Like, I just what was I don't know what I was gonna say, I forgot. But I just, when I'm in that rage and stuff, I just can't control myself. I have no idea, like, how to stop it, because like it's not our fault, because our brain is on fire or inflamed or controlling us. And just if somebody doesn't understand you and stuff like that, it's just really hard and stuff. So yeah, it's because I don't know, it's just, and also with that, afterwards I feel a lot of guilt and sadness, because because it's not me that's actually, even though I might be saying it and it's my body that's saying it, it's not like actually me, which I think is important for people to know. It's actually about illness, which at first took me very long to be able to understand that, because when I would be feeling guilty, I just was like saying stuff to myself like that I'm just a bad person, and because I'd have a lot of guilt after, because even though whilst in my anger rages, part of my brain or part of me knew that it was wrong what I was doing, I couldn't help it. Even when I was like trying to fight against it or myself, just kind of the illness would win. And after, so then you still feel guilty, and so I think this leads us on to talking about how parents can help us and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely understand the guilt thing, because I know I would feel a lot of remorse after a rage attack, and then I kind of, because I was told so much that it's behavioural, I felt like I needed to control myself more, but I couldn't. And then I just thought I was like a horrible kid, a horrible person, a mean person. But over time, you know, I know now that it's a rage attack, but I think that is, you know, an issue if people aren't met with compassion, and people begin to feel guilty for having the rages and stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's also quite important that the parents, that they don't take things personally, because I know I definitely know I maybe a lot of the time say horrible things to my mum or stuff, but that I really don't mean, but in that rage and everything, even though she's trying to help me, yeah, just that's important. I think that parents don't take it personal, because even though it's hard, because if your child is saying stuff like that to you.
I think that's definitely a very good point, because we're not us when we're in a rage attack. We're not really the one who we don't want to be doing this. We just can't help it. Yes. Yeah. So what were we moving on to next? Wait, should we talk about trauma, like how it can traumatize the individual and the family? Okay. So do you want to start off discussing that?
Well, I think with PANDAS, there's a lot of different trauma. There's the part when you're like misdiagnosed and you're kind of traumatized by treatments that some are like therapy or different medicines. Taking them, you can get really traumatized by that, because sometimes those treatments can make your symptoms even worse and you're just worse off even longer. But then there's also trauma then if once you've basically been diagnosed, or even before, when you start getting so bad, and or you're waiting for you're trying out different meds, because that had this year when my new onset of flare started terribly. Like, we tried antibiotics because that was what was working before, and then those 6 different antibiotics didn't work, so we have to try other medicines. And so the hard thing is you have to be patient with PANDAS, because you have to give the medicine also a try, and like give them time to try and work. But so if you're thinking about all these different meds that I had to try, and you have to wait weeks and weeks to see if there's any improvement, it's just a lot of trauma. Like, every day is a battle, and then some meds can make you even worse. And then if you're so bad off, because unfortunately this year I was so bad off, we tried so many medicines, and one day when I was so bad off in a anger rage, and I was trying to hurt myself, because it was kind of like a cry for help, I guess, because I'm not like exactly suicidal or stuff, but because I was just my brain was so inflamed, because I have so many different infections and different things that were triggering it, and the symptoms that were so bad, like I couldn't even be able to sleep anymore, because even if I had sleeping meds and I was actually sleeping, in my dream I was still struggling with my OCD and stuff like that. So, and one day when it was so bad and I was hurting myself, well, that had been going on for a while, but it would only be when I was like in a really bad flare. But when it then got so bad, like I was so helpless, I was out of control, and I was just frustrated and had lost hope, because it was like almost 6 months since I've been in this bad flare, and it's just getting worse, and we've tried so many medicines, and none of it has worked, and everybody's just telling me to be patient, but it's just fresh. Like, I was patient at first, because at first I was like, I'm sure we'll find something, but after like 6 months and you're just getting worse and worse, and every day is just a whole new battle, and symptoms are getting worse, you kind of start to kind of lose hope, and because you're just every day you're losing yourself a bit more. And so when I got that bad on that day, I was so helpless, because the days before were so bad already, and then that day I was actually trying to climb out of a window, because I didn't want to live anymore. And I'm not actually a suicidal person, but it was just I was so bad off, I just couldn't do it anymore. Like, because at first I was trying to get knives and stuff like that, but my parents would then have to hide everything because they were worried, obviously, when I was in a flare that I would do stuff like that. And then it got so bad that, I mean, I was saying about the window thing, I was saying it like a few days already before, but I never then had the guts to actually climb out or open it. But on that day, it was so bad, I was actually hanging out of the window. So then my parents had to unfortunately call the ambulance, and then ambulance came and the police and stuff. So that was also definitely a big trauma. So if you're not getting help, so I think it's, even though I was then already diagnosed with it, I was just so bad off because I wasn't responding. But then if children aren't diagnosed yet and parents don't know what's going on with them, they will also maybe call the ambulance because children might be doing other dangerous things, or they just don't know what to do anymore. And unfortunately, because the people haven't been educated enough, like the whole ambulance situation and stuff like that is a big trauma. But then if people haven't been educated enough, then actually at the hospital itself, even though they knew that I had pandas, they knew that at the hospital that lots of police cars came. I was dragged out by 2 police people because I had locked myself in the room and everything. Even though they knew all of that, and they knew I was in the ambulance, and in the ambulance I was like screaming my head off, trying to undo the seat belt that, like, on that bed that I was laying. I was just so, like, I thought that was it, because I don't know what was going to happen to me then. It was definitely hard, really hard. And then even though we were at the hospital, they didn't really do anything. Even though my mum had told them everything, they didn't do anything. They didn't really try. They just gave me, I don't know what it was, but they gave me something to calm me down and then sent us home, or let us go home. So even though they knew how bad off I was, unfortunately, because people don't have enough education, they didn't do anything. And the next days, I was still off bad. But because I was so traumatized by that experience, I don't have depression, but it took me quite a few months to actually recover from that event. I completely lost hope. Before, I still always had a little bit of hope, but after that I thought, nobody's helping me, because even when I went to the hospital, nobody helped me. So I just had completely lost hope. And then, even though I don't really have depression, especially the first few days, I just felt down. Nothing was making me happy anymore. So no little things, like now I'm better, I get happy about and excited about things, but then nothing was making me happy. Even though lots of family came here to like support me and stuff, and I would have been so happy to see them, but I wasn't even happy about that. I just was so sad. Like, I don't know, but also, even though I was getting worse, I was so scared and traumatized by that experience that basically I just tried to be in my room, because I was worried that if my anger rages got too bad, that I'd have to go through the whole ambulance and police situation again. So there's a lot of trauma with that. So
Definitely.
yeah, that's kind of my trauma. Sorry, it's quite long. Yeah, what about you?
That sounds absolutely horrible to you, and horrible for you, and it's awful that you had to go through that. And this is why it is so important for people to be able to access different treatments and stuff, and to be able to find something that works, because unfortunately there are probably others out there who experience horrible rages and stuff, but they don't know what they have. So that is just awful that you had to go through that. I would say, for me, I think it impacted my family quite a lot in terms of family trauma, because I know when I changed suddenly at the age of 8, once my mum had eventually got me to school, because I was often late because of the OCD, but once my mum had eventually gotten me to school, she would go into my bedroom and look at all the toys I could no longer play with and cry, because I wasn't, she was kind of mourning because I wasn't me anymore. And I know that they were very stressed because they had to obviously care for me all the time. I was kind of disabled by it. My parents had to like dress me. My dad had to sleep in a room with me. So, you know, I was like almost full time. They didn't really get much of a break. So it can be very stressful and traumatic for the family. And also with the parent blaming, if they're blamed for it, that's going to traumatize them even more, because they would lose their confidence as a parent. They may start to blame themselves, and that can be, you know, heart-wrenching for a parent to go through when they care about their child so much and they just want to do what they can to help them. If they're blamed over and over again, then that can have long-term effects on their well-being and everything.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that, because also then you don't have your life, you don't really have a life because you're just dealing with your symptoms. But then also because our parents, because they, even though they might have, like I have other siblings they have to care about, they then basically just become your, like you said, like your carer, because we can't even, like, we can't deal with it ourselves. So also our parents are basically, even though they don't have to deal with having the illness, they have to deal still with the illness because we're with like them, and it's just quite hard, like, because I also then I can't, sometimes when I'm really bad off, I can't do anything else. Like I can't I couldn't cope without my mum, but even if I would try, because I would also want her to be able to be with my other siblings, I just rely a lot then on her. And also with trauma, then, well, I have two siblings, but one of them is quite young, so she doesn't really understand. But my younger brother, who's 8, he had to like he had to go through a lot as well, just because even though my parents try and make sure that my siblings don't my siblings don't see kind of what's happening.
They hear what's happening.
They try not to like make sure that they see what's happening or like distract them, but obviously they do sometimes. Sometimes did hear what was happening, even though they might not see it. So definitely for my brother, I think when I was so bad off, there was also, I think for him there was quite a lot of trauma, and like seeing your brother being kind of scared of you is like, it just hurts a lot when somebody that you love so much is kind of scared of you, because you're already feeling quite sad because you're helpless and everything, and then but you have no control. So yeah. Would you like to add anything, or should we ask if anybody else has any questions and stuff?
We can go on to the questions.
Okay. I think there have been already a few questions, but you can carry on asking if anybody else has any questions. So there was a question: what would your top 3 tips be for parents in how to support their PP child? So do you want to go first?
Okay, so I would say, well, for the first one for parents is just know that you are doing an incredible job. Most people don't really, might not understand the extent that PANDAS parents have to advocate for their child. They have to care, obviously, everyone has to care for their child, but be an actual carer and do everything for them. And, these parents do so much and it often goes unnoticed. But I think these parents, they may not get credit from others, but give themselves credit because they are actually doing a brilliant job. And the children will be grateful when they're out of flare for all of the care, advocacy, and everything you provide for them, and how much you did try and get them the care and treatment that they need, and also that it was never your parenting or anything. I would say the second thing is, be connecting and validating and compassionate and comfort your child. Just be there for them so that they know that they're loved unconditionally and that you do see their pain and that they haven't done anything wrong, and that you are there for them regardless of what symptoms they have and everything. And just be there to support them, because when we're validated, it helps so much. And obviously the last thing, I think we did already touch upon this, but with the rage attacks, you don't want to discipline them because they are involuntary, and person with PANDAS will sometimes have oppositional defiance and personality changes. They may not be the child or the adult, if but don't discipline it, and know that the child can come back. It's not going to be like this forever, but for now, don't help your child not feel guilty for it, really.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of those things, and just that parents just know that because I think a lot of the time, because parents just get judged a lot of the time because of people not knowing about it. So yeah, it's also important for parents to know that like they're doing a good job. Because like I don't know where I would be now if my mum didn't find whatever she found on the internet about pandas. Because I don't think even now I would be properly diagnosed with pandas. So, but my top tips would be to like really just be patient, because depending on how even if you're not that bad off, it's gonna take time, because if your brain's on fire, so it's gonna take time, because even if the fire is out, it's kind of like you have to rebuild what's kind of been burnt down, if you know what I'm like. It's gonna take time, and just be calm, and like, because I can't really deal with very well with a lot of like if there's a lot going on, or if there's tension or something.
Yeah, definitely.
So definitely be calm and stuff, and like just do your, not in a rude way, but make sure you're like educated well, because and that's actually quite, I think, a challenge, because there is so much information, and you can't just go basically on one website and find everything about pandas, because there is so much actually, and so parents might not always have that time or stuff like that. So because if they also have the research or know a lot, or that will help them definitely to understand us as well, I think.
Yeah.
I think Andy taught me something quite important, and I think it was several years in, actually says, I keep telling you, why aren't you listening? And those were things like, she would say, you have to come to the toilet with me. And normally a teenage kid, you would, don't be silly, you can go to the toilet on your own. But she has such severe separation anxiety. Even in that moment, she just cannot deal with it. And don't put that battle up for her. She's had, they have enough battles. Do whatever might even seem silly to you, and accompany them. I mean, even teenage kids that can't sleep alone, on their own. You think you've been through that. A teenage kid should be able to sleep alone, but no. If they have such severe separation anxiety or such severe thoughts going on the whole time, they might fear to death to be alone. So if it has to be, then it has to be, and they sleep in your room, because any stress induced more on top will make them worse. And that is something Angelina has definitely taught me over time.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Let me find questions.
Yeah. I know that I was like 13 when I started sleeping on my own, and when you're in a flare, your brain obviously doesn't function how most people do, so you do have to sometimes do things differently. Just do what works for you and stuff.
Yeah. So the next question: what frustrates you the most about having pandas? So what frustrates me is like the most, I think, is that you have no control whatsoever, and you just don't know when it's going to happen, when you're going to get triggered, when you're going to be in a big flare and onset again. So 1 second you might be like doing quite well and only having to deal with a few symptoms, but then the next second you're just in a big flare with anger, rage, and everything. So I think that's definitely my frustrations.
Yeah, that the loss of control is definitely very frustrating, and I would say, um, for me, the most frustrating thing can be to feel so misunderstood. Feel like you have to keep explaining yourself. Doctors not understanding, and I think knowing that it's very difficult for people to understand unless they also have pandas pans. So you want to explain to someone so you feel um, validated and cared for, but you know people probably won't understand if they haven't been through it themselves. And then I would say the thing that it is actually frustrating on a whole is knowing that so many people are misdiagnosed and undiagnosed, and that they may be suffering when something could be done.
Yeah, and it's definitely also frustrating is to have to kind of retell your story over and over again, because like, I had to go to lots of different doctors until I finally got more help, even though I was already diagnosed. Like, so I think, and so I was just also getting so frustrated and sick and tired of having to, because my mum would tell most of the story, but obviously doctors would also have questions for me, and I was just getting, even though yeah, I did want to get help and I do want to go get better, but at some point you just are like, this is just another person that I'm kind of telling my story, but I'm not gonna get any more help. I don't think I'm gonna get help, because when you've gone through so many things and seen so many doctors and none of them have really done anything that really helps. Yeah. Let me see one more question. What gives you strength to keep going and fight pandas? Would you like to start?
Okay, yes. I think what gives me strength is knowing that I have always grown from my experiences, and even though it could be a waking nightmare at the time when you're in a flare, and you also don't know how long the flare is going to last, it's it's difficult, but you can grow from your experiences, and I feel like I know this because I can use it to learn more. I can use it to develop more resilience and become stronger and learn new things about myself and learn new things so that I can help others. And I think knowing that I actually sometimes do gain stuff from my experiences after it, because I can use it for something. And also, I would say that another thing is also it's given me gratitude, which sounds quite strange, but I don't take things for granted because I know how things can change overnight. And I think that what I was saying. Yeah, I know how things can change overnight, and I know that the little things are something you want to cherish, and things that most people would take for granted seem more, magical to me because of what I've been through. So I think knowing that I do grow and develop more gratitude from my experiences, that gives me strength.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just knowing, although this illness is really rubbish and things are really bad sometimes, knowing that this will make me even stronger definitely also gives you strength. But like you said, so what just gives me like strength to keep going, keep fighting is just if when I have better days, although I still might have quite a lot of symptoms, just I'm like, okay, today actually wasn't as bad as yesterday. And just little things, little improvements, like you said, other people might be like, okay, why does that give you strength? But when you know how bad you can be, so even if you're having a bad day, you're like, oh, well, at least it's not as bad as 2 months ago when I had to go to the hospital and stuff like that. So so I definitely agree on that. Let me see if there are any more questions.
I feel like as well with the gratitude thing, as you're saying, when you see how far you've come, it kind of does feel like a miracle in a sense, because I know for me, I thought I was going to be disabled for my whole life, and now I am so much better. So I think that's definitely something that we see the improvement and gives us a bit of hope as well.
Yeah, I think also, like you said, just even though, like, I know a lot of people said that to me, even though when I was super bad, like that you will get better, I sometimes didn't really believe anymore. But having such a quite traumatic experience with PANS and PANDAS, even though I used to kind of get annoyed when people would tell me that, because I had kind of didn't believe them anymore, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But it just might take, some people can recover depending on how bad the inflammation is, can recover and get better quicker. But others, once they finally get diagnosed and treated, it can take a lot longer, because depending on how long the inflammation and everything has gone on for. So I think, yeah, that's quite important. And then there's a question like there's a question, I have PANS and I get really nervous when I have tics in public as everyone stares. What do you suggest?
I
think that's one for you to ask.
Yeah. So I would say the first thing is know that how other people react to your tics reflects them and has nothing to do with you, because your tics are involuntary. Suppressing them makes it worse and can trigger other symptoms as well. So if somebody does stare at you, they're probably just curious, and if someone does comment on it, know that it reflects their own misunderstanding, and you can take loud and proud, no, you're not doing anything wrong. And as well as that, I would say you can get a little card that explains what tics are. You can make your own. That's what I've done, and show it to people if they have an issue with it, really, so that they can understand. And confidence building, I feel like over time you do kind of develop confidence. It can be quite difficult, but I think when you accept yourself and know that it's really nothing to be ashamed of, then it can really, really help.
Yeah, I think that actually the card idea is actually really good for, even though I don't have tics, at first, especially when I got ill, I would be quite ashamed of my symptoms. I didn't want anybody to know, like, because I just felt ashamed, and I don't know, I just felt like people would see me different. I felt like people would, because I wanted to be seen as normal, but actually nobody's normal because we're all different. But I just kind of wanted to be seen like that. Like, I didn't want to be seen as different, even though now I know being different isn't something bad. And so yeah, I think that's quite also important. There's another question. It's how do you feel about having PANS PANDAS as a young child, and how do you feel about it now being older? Do you want to start?
Okay. So like similar to you, when I was younger, I didn't really want people to know about it. I remember telling, because I was late to school like almost every day because my OCD, and the school were obviously like asking, well, why are you always late? But I was like begging my parents, don't tell the school, don't tell the teachers that I have OCD and stuff. And also I didn't want my extended family to know either. I was really ashamed of it. And with the tics, I would say at first I was a little bit ashamed of them, but over time I've definitely grown and become more confident in myself, and because I can see how much PANDAS has helped me grow. And also I remember, I think the big thing that helped me suddenly develop confidence was when I actually started speaking about my experiences on social media and seeing others speak about their experiences. And when I was seeing others speak about these things, I was like, well, if others are speaking about it, then there's no shame in it. So now I'm actually really confident and open to speak about it, because I know there's nothing to be ashamed of, and I know that if I speak out, then it can help others, and there isn't anything wrong with me as a person, even though I may have felt like that for a long time.
Yeah, because at first, definitely, when I got that diagnosis and stuff, I didn't really, because I was also, well, I was 8, but still quite young too, because it's a lot to, a lot of information and a lot of things to deal with. I didn't really understand it. I just knew, okay, so the doctor told me I've got PANDAS, basically, and stuff, so I have PANDAS. But for a while, even though I knew, deep inside me, that the reason I'm behaving like this or dealing with these symptoms is not my, it's because I'm ill, and that's why I have to take medicine. That's just how I was thinking. But I was like, but I don't want anybody to know that doesn't need to know. So only like, so I always get so mad and angry at my mum if she would tell anybody else about it. So a lot of the time at that time she wouldn't maybe tell me that, she would have told somebody else because she had to like tell the school and stuff. But sometimes, you know, sometimes things come out and then I would find out that my mum had told somebody else because somebody would have confronted me about it, and that just made me really uncomfortable because I was still trying to deal with it myself. And so yeah, but now I'm still like, my close friends, they know about it, and like basically family, because like they also need to know to understand things. And I think actually now I'm still, I don't think I would tell anyone about it, but most people who I know will understand. And yeah, and I just know like now that I've started to accept that I am ill, and this way it's also easier because before, even though people were telling me that was my illness, I was always just blaming myself. But now that, so then you can also, if you just tell yourself you are ill, you are ill, and then it can help you also a bit with guilt and stuff. And just like you said, like now that I've started to accept myself, being able to share my story with others and being able to talk about it, give tips and raise awareness to also like stop people from having to go through all of the things that we've had to go through. Like everybody will have to go through something because PANDAS is not easy. It's a really hard illness, but if we raise a lot of awareness and more people know about it and are educated, then they can get help quicker. And so I think that's quite important. And yeah, just it might take time, even when just to, because it's like, even though you've got a diagnosis and you have now some information online, it'll just take you a while to kind of, you have to like get to know yourself again. So I think that's it. Yeah. There was another question. Were you able to understand what was happening when you were young, when you had PANDAS? Well, I was 8, so like I said, I kind of knew that I was ill, and I knew I had PANDAS, but I didn't really know much. I didn't know. I just thought the symptoms that I had were the symptoms that everybody gets. But there's so many symptoms. Like I've met so many on Instagram, so many people who have PANDAS, and some of them they have like sometimes I have similar symptoms to them, but some have completely different symptoms and stuff. Like yeah, and so I think at first I didn't really understand, because also I think I didn't really want to hear much about it, because yeah, because it made me angry at that time. So yeah, but what about you?
When I was younger, it was always interesting because I would always say that I want to be like this and that there's nothing wrong with me, when obviously I didn't want to be like that because I was, you know, disabled by it. And I don't really know why I would like say that at the time. Maybe I was in denial about myself. I'm not too sure. I know that I did have a lot of issues articulating certain symptoms. I used to have out-of-body sensations, which are called phantom tics. I would feel sensations on doors and stuff, but obviously I couldn't articulate that when I was younger, and I would call it sticky magic. I would say the sticky magic over there, but people wouldn't really understand what I'm saying. And as well as that, you know, it's interesting because when I was younger, it was almost like I was completely in denial, and then when I was a little bit older, I would say that it was kind of like I was observing a body and mind that weren't really my own. I mean, I was quite dissociated anyway, but because it was like most of my mind was filled with the PANDAS thoughts, PANDAS stuff. There's like little me in the back, my little awareness, just like what's going on. And I feel like I was also watching my body lose coordination and feel very different. I also lost sensation. So I was just basically watching a body that didn't feel like it was my own. So I would say I got more insight as I got older, but it always feels really strange.
Yeah, definitely. now still I don't really know much about, like, because I do know a lot about pandas because I'm obviously going through it and I've gone through a lot, but also the thing is, symptoms, like, they can change a lot over time, and just because today I'm responding to this medicine doesn't mean I'm going to be responding to it tomorrow. It just because sometimes things change, like, because I was really frustrated because I was like, antibiotics, I know they help me, but then that didn't help me anymore, and trying 6 different antibiotics and stuff like that, it was just so, yeah, really hard, because I thought we finally, like, we found something. So I think that's also a big thing. But now that I'm older, I think it just, because I guess I'm also more able to express things, it definitely helped me in this way. So now it's also good because now I can also understand it. Although when you're in a flare, things are a lot harder to understand or process. But yeah, I don't think there are any more questions. Does anybody else have any more questions? Because otherwise I think that's it. And yeah, but we'll just wait for a bit in case anybody has any more questions.
I think I thought of something else to add that I thought might be helpful to say. I feel like sometimes people might have some sort of insight, but may not want to open up about it, like, because we were talking about sort of the shame that we felt and stuff. I feel like sometimes talking about it can cause people to become quite withdrawn or defensive or, you know, aggressive. I know that was definitely my case. I did not want to speak about it when I was younger, so I thought that might be useful to add as well, because some people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think first, because my mum basically she does, like, with the other pandas mums, they're trying to raise a lot of awareness to help and stuff. And at first I kind of, like, I had to accept it that she was doing it. But at first I was kind of like, because I didn't want anybody to know about it, I was just like, why are you doing all these things? Why are you trying to be all on Instagram and Twitter and stuff? Like, you know, but she's doing it for, like, good cause. But now that, but then over time, when I was kind of accepting that, I also realized, I was like, you know, she's helping. Maybe I can use my voice and help others. So at first on this Instagram account, I stayed anonymous and I didn't go live or anything, because even though I was helping people by posting stuff and giving my thoughts, I didn't even post any pictures. So this is actually the first time people that follow me can see my face, because before I don't post anything like that. So like, anybody that's, even if you don't have pandas but you know stuff about it, or if you do, anyone who makes an account or does anything to talk about it helps. So even if you want to maybe help and raise more awareness, but you don't want people maybe to know that you have it, even though there's nothing to be ashamed about, just know that also there are other ways. So I think it's important that we raise awareness so there's less suffering, and also because unfortunately sometimes people just think, when they don't know what we have, they just see us as crazy, but we're not crazy, you know. But yeah, I think there are no more questions, so we've been on here quite a while. So if nobody has any more questions, I think that's it. So yeah, thank you for talking about it with me and going live, and thank you for everyone else for joining us and watching this live and taking that time and showing interest and asking questions. And yeah, take care, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me on here.
You're welcome. No problem. It's actually just really, like, nice to have somebody else also do it, because even though you were doing it with me, I was really nervous. So, and like, this again shows that I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that's fighting this. And yeah, anyway,